Good morning. It's nice to see you all. As you guys know, when I'm up to speaking, we're going to do a little Hebrew lesson this morning. So I was going to tell a Hebrew priest and a mom joke, but Emily was like, "Don't do it. It's not wise." So I'm adhering to the guidance of Emily this morning. So the title of this sermon and the core thesis of it is called Work from Rest. And if that sounds odd, it should. Work from rest. So today we're talking about the Sabbath, which is, interestingly enough, quite a central idea, and not just a central idea in the Old Testament, but it shows up quite a few times in the New Testament as well. In fact, one could argue that there are really some core Sabbath themes in the book of Hebrews and in the book of the Revelation that sometimes we miss. But interestingly enough, as core as it seems scripturally and as core as it seems in the Old Testament, it often seems odd to us. It seems strangely unfamiliar in our practice. Would you guys agree? Have you ever had the experience of going to vacation and the first day of vacation, you're like, I don't know what to do with myself because I've got all these things that I need. That phenomenon, I think, drives a lot of us human beings a lot. And I think actually God has something to speak into not only that mentality, but also just the way that we order and think about our lives. A lot of protest against the Sabbath and against the observance of a Sabbath is, well, it feels like it's about rules and restrictions. And we're on the other side in the New Covenant, and the New Covenant, it's about grace, so we don't have to hear those rules anymore, or that it's unproductive, or it's going to make me fall behind, or, it's just not practical. I've got so many things going on. And so I think when we start digging into it, there are some core themes and fears and anxieties that even bubble up when we think about resting and when we think about Sabbathing, if that's a verb, it is now. Fear that if we'll stop, we'll fall behind. Fear that if we rest, we'll lose control. Anyone ever felt that? Feel that if we're not productive, we won't matter. Fear that if we stop working, maybe there's something in our identity that's not being assuaged there. But the Sabbath doesn't intend to shame those fears. It actually intends to expose them and invite us. It's not a test of obedience. It's an invitation to trust and experience God. There's the core thesis. All right, so let's turn to the scriptures. Genesis 2, 3. And I'm going to read it just out loud. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. Anything strike you when you read that? It's very redundant, isn't it? Like if you're reading that, we as our Western minds and the way we read it, when we see things like that, we have a tendency to blow past stuff that looks odd, right? Well, either the author is stuttering or stumbling or being redundant, or, and I'm going to posit this as the thesis, they're asking us to pay attention to something. So God finishes his work on the seventh day. Would you go to the next slide? Yes, on the next day. On the seventh day, from the work which he did, and you've got a little in pink there, that's a Hebrew word called melakah. Have you heard the adage that, the Eskimos have multiple words for snow because it's present around them all the time? Well, in Hebrew, there are multiple words for work. I'm going to argue that this is actually quite an important one. It never shows up in the Hebrew scriptures in any negative connotation. It is asked not to do it, but it never has any, and in fact, it's creative work, it's craftsmanship, it's design work, if you will. It's something that brings joy out of labor. It is not something laborious. So the B is then on the seventh day, and then finally, different verb from above. You've got kala up at the top. You've got Shabbat, which is where we get the term Sabbath, Shabbat, at the end. So what's interesting here is the text is taking us, this is called a chiastic structure. It's taking us to the middle of this. And God rested from his work. So what's the first question you guys raise when you hear that God rested? Exactly. So hold on a second. This is the God who just spoke the cosmos he spoke it into existence. And we're not just talking the third rock from the sun. He put time and space in order. And yet now we're talking about he's tired. So it should make us stop. It should make us question, right? Well, here's the reality about how the scriptures work. I'm going to say something a little evocative. The scriptures often aren't a theology book. They are theological, but they're not a theology book. So it's not like you get a system and explain all the things God is, and here's the systematic theology. In fact, there's an absence of systematic theology. Sorry for all my Presbyterian friends in here. But there's an absence. There's more poetry and there's more narrative. Why? God's actually welcoming us into some form of tension, and he's trying to give us a lens of how to relate to him, how to relate to each other, how to relate to our work, how to relate to our life, how to see things. In God's economy, he's welcoming us into a new way of looking at life. So God teaches us this foundational truth in Genesis 2:3, that in God's economy, in his world, life is not sustained by endless making. Life is sustained by the receipt of joy and abundance. This is really important, and we won't get into it today, but basically this sets the stage for the difference in a value-based economy, a blessed economy, or a zero-sum economy. Truly. And the scriptures actually play this out quite heavily. At the heart of this passage, we see that word melakah. It's going to show up again and again and again. So again, I go back to this idea, and if we go to the next slide, that we just don't it's hard for us to take Sabbath seriously. It's a little bit odd for us. I put the lorem ipsum text. You guys know that filler text that you put in, when you see like a blank, web page, or you're building your web page. So I just put the text in just to give you a visual. If we just did like all the lorem ipsums and filled everything with it, let me ask the easy question today, and there will be harder questions later. What's the most prominent command that you see there? Number 4. Take a guess which one number 4 is. There we go. All right. That was another easy one. You guys, I feel like you're being a little bit shy, but all right. So the Sabbath, clearly the text, not only does it pay attention to it, it gives us a positive call to remember it. In Exodus 20, it says, remember the Sabbath, keep it holy. So actually it says, guard or keep the Sabbath. In Deuteronomy 5, it says, remember it. It provides a negative boundary. Don't do melakah, the creative work, the joyous work, interestingly enough. It has a social vision for it, for your children, for your servants, the people that you work with, for immigrants, and even for the animals that are in your care. Isn't this interesting? It goes to this length. And it actually gives 2 different theological reasons. So and reason number 1 was around creation in Exodus and around redemption in the Deuteronomy instance of the 10 Commandments. So the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, don't just give us a command for Sabbath. They actually are trying to persuade us. I have a thesis, because it knows we're going to struggle with it. Because, and hear me here, stopping is harder than doing. Yeah? Receiving is harder than striving. Think about that. It's like the Bible knew we would wrestle with this one. And so, let's keep moving through, and just keep that word melakah in the back of your brain. Sorry for the eye chart. This is Exodus 31, and we're not going to read the whole thing. But this same word, melakah, shows up for God's creation. That shows up in God's creation. This is actually the creation of the tabernacle. So a couple of interesting textual points. And again, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to read the whole text. I would encourage you guys just to read all of Exodus 31. It's a really fascinating passage. But in Exodus 31, you get, so I've called by a man named Bezalel. Interesting, in Hebrew, it's Bezalel. It's a reference to B'Tselem Elohim, the image of God. So here you have Bezalel, who's this great architect who's designing the tabernacle, And he's from Judah. He's the esteemed one. You have Aholiab, who's from the tribe of Dan, which is kind of the marginalized tribe. It's not the tribe that gets a lot of press, right? And these two guys are responsible for the construction of the tabernacle. They are doing all this work, this melakah, this creative craftsmanship. So you think, and listen, Exodus 25 through 31 have given all these details of what the construction of the tabernacle looks like. At least a dozen times, in some form, melakah shows up, that this word for craftsmanship and work. And so, but all of a sudden, it gets interrupted. And actually, there's a little, it's actually really little, it's a word called ak. And it only shows up a few times in Hebrew, but it's like, it's the technical term for it is hold up, wait a minute. So like it's actually going, before we do anything else, let's consider, and look what shows up. The Sabbath. Isn't that interesting? Like we're talking about, like if you're reading it through, and who's ever done like a year-long Bible reading plan before? And how many times you go through it and you get through it and you're like, why does that go there? You know, like that seems, we were just talking about something else. We just spent 6 chapters talking about the tabernacle and its constructions, and now we're talking about Sabbath. Why? I think the answer is in the next chapter, is in Exodus 32. And interestingly enough, that is the mention of the golden calf. Also, interestingly enough, if you look at the entirety of the book of Exodus, it seems to draw a center, a chiastic structure right into the middle of Exodus 31, 32. A Sabbath economy versus a golden calf economy. Now, Egypt hasn't been mentioned for some times in the text. Clearly, we're talking about the Exodus early. We're talking about being saved. We're talking about the Red Sea. We're talking about all these things. Then Egypt goes silent because they're saved, right? They move from it. 7 times in chapter 32, Egypt gets mentioned. Isn't that really interesting? It's come back. Why? Because we're contrasting 2 things. We're contrasting God's economy. We're contrasting Pharaoh's economy. But here's what I think is really interesting, what the text is doing. The first Pharaoh that we see is an external Pharaoh that's oppressing us, that's creating slave labor. There is no rest. It's endless work. The second Pharaoh was created by us, was created by God's people. Israel, in its most religious, ultimately ends up creating more idolatry and moving away from God's economy. Isn't that really interesting? So there's this whole tension that's going on. And what I'm saying to you is like you've got this creation of the tabernacle, you've got the Sabbath, these 2 expressions of God's presence, because what I believe the text is saying is if we don't rest and welcome God into it, we just become oppressive again. And it's either oppressive from someone else, but often how much of our own oppression, our own anxieties drive our work. Rabbi Heschel says, when we welcome God in time, the Sabbath, we welcome God in space in our work. So the Sabbath just isn't some like quaint little rule. It's a worldview. It's a view of different economies. And by the way, these economic themes, they echo all the way through the scriptures, whether it's Babel, whether it's Egypt, whether it's Assyria, whether it's Babylon, whether it's Rome, whether it's New Babylon. The Bible is always suspicious of empire. Because there's the way you run an empire is you turn the screws, right? You get as much out of your labor and out of your resources as you possibly can with no care or concern, because it's about satiating your own fears. In God's economy, it's about taking care. It's about receiving. It's not about grasping, it's about receiving. When we work outside of God's economy, we create fear, anxiety, we distort our own identity, we end up destroying resources, we destroy relationships. But when we Sabbath, we can be creative, joyous, we can participate in a blessed divine economy, because right now, when we're Sabbathing, when we're welcoming God, we're living a full, joyous, abundant life. Because who is building the house? The Lord. The Lord is building the house. And what does the end of that verse that we read in Psalm 127 say? Unless he builds the house, we labor in vain. And what does he give us when he builds the house? He gives us rest. So let's go. I want to focus. We're going to conclude here on Exodus 16 because I want to give you a little more visibility into God's economy versus Pharaoh's economy. So the rabbis, I studied with some rabbis, and they call this the training wheel laws that are given to Israel. And what it means by that is God gave them laws they actually couldn't break. And believe me, they tried. They actually, this text, that little bolded note right there in the middle, on the seventh day, some of the people were to gather. If you remember the story, he says, okay, I'm going to give you manna every day, right? So God is the one in the wilderness that is giving them sustenance, giving them what they need. But don't collect on the Sabbath day, on the seventh day. It's a day for rest. I'll give you a double portion. Well, what do you think they did on the seventh day? Of course, they went try and gather. There's nothing there. So what God is training them how to keep the laws even when their instincts are to break them. That's a gracious God right there. So what's happening here is God is he's teaching his people. He's giving them rest. He's contrasting a laborious, like Pharaohic economy that gives them no rest. And remember that they just wanted to go out in the wilderness and worship, have a holiday. In fact, he's giving them an economy where there's constant rest into it. But there's this really strange detail at the very end of this passage. I've got it in bold. Pastor William cited this the other day. Manna in Hebrew is man, which just means what. So it's like, what is this? It's very strange. And now the house of Israel called it manna. What? Because it was like coriander seed, white. If you're reading this in your year-long Bible, this is one you blow past really quickly, right? Like, okay, fine. Is this a culinary detail? Are we trying to get a sense of like what it tastes like? Or like why? It's really interesting because lavan in Hebrew, which means white, is also the same word lavana for brick. Okay, well, why is that significant? We're actually getting a contrast, again, between Pharaoh's economy and God's economy. I've got a little tape measure here. I was trying to get a little build for you guys, but a brick that the Hebrew people were building was 50 by 50 by 27. That's a good sized brick. 2.5 tons. That lavan was deeply oppressive, right? And remember, Pharaoh ratchets up the requirements on the bricks with less resources, right? That's Pharaoh's economy. God's economy, see if I've got it here. The coriander, the white, that's a coriander seed. And he gives all of this. It's intended to share. It's intended to be light. It's intended not to have burden. What a beautiful image. The text is just giving us all these nice little clues. Now, I want to give some encouragement because people might say, okay, Gavin, it's fine. You know, you're talking about the Sabbath. Isn't that easy for you to say? Like you've got a good job, you know, you got some, but actually Sabbath was given in the wilderness when they didn't have a calendar. They didn't know where their next meal was coming from because it wasn't about stability even for the Israelites. It was about faithfulness. So I'm encouraging us to actually try something on as a spiritual discipline. Sabbath doesn't require idle conditions. It just needs to be practiced. It can be very simple. Someday it's a full day of rest. I'm taking off. I'm shutting off the phone. Another day, it just might be refusing to take on an extra task. It might just be the simple lighting of a candle and saying, God, this is your time. This is your space. So as we think about and we move into the conclusion of this talk, I'd like to say some things plainly. In God's economy, work is meaningful. He's not trying to get rid of work. He's actually elevating it. He's making it humane, making it joyous, making it loving. Work is meaningful, freeing, creative, yet bounded. Rest is a gift. Provision is received. Value is shared. People are not disposable or expendable. God dwells with his people. In Pharaoh's economy, work is endless and anxious. Rest feels dangerous. Provision is chased and seized. Value flows upward. Workers are diminished. People become assets and acceptable losses, and power lords over people. The Sabbath is the weekly practice that says we will not live as Pharaoh as king. We believe God is the king, and where fear and anxiety are in Pharaoh's economy, we believe in a kingly economy of God himself dwelling with us that has justice, equity, rest, and peace. And so we even practice this now as we prepare for the Eucharist. Every Sunday we come to the table. The table is not a reward for the strong, but it's a place for the hungry. As the liturgy says, our spiritual food and sustenance. I love that line in that beautiful liturgy. So here, deep breath. We stop our striving. We begin receiving. We stay openly. We are not in control, but we have a king who is. As God fed Israel with bread that they could not store, so Christ feeds us now, not with monuments, but with mercy. He does not force us to form bricks. He gives us daily bread. And this daily bread is given, not earned, received, not hoarded. Daily bread is not just a rite or a ritual. It's an acceptance of God's economy. So let me say this clearly. If you've never practiced the Sabbath, it's not condemnation. It's just a simple invitation. I want us to think about it, particularly as we're coming into the new year. Try something simple. I've actually, if you want it, I wrote a little Sabbath liturgy for you guys. If you want to, all it takes is a candle, some bread, and some wine. You guys choose how fancy you want to be with your wine. But it's or grape juice, that's right. It's a very simple liturgy. You're welcome to it. I've got a stack of them printed for you because I'm arguing from creation to the Ten Commandments, to the tabernacle, to manna, to daily bread. God keeps teaching us the same lesson. Life is sustained not by grasping, but by receiving. Not by hoarding, but by sharing. Not by working to rest, but working from rest. Amen.